sir. On April 13th today. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, members of the public. Staff, thank you for being here. Everyone that's here present on the commission, thank you. Thank you, officer from Escondido PD. So I am vice chair, but I will be filling in today as the chair position. And we'll just go ahead and get started on our call to order, which we did. And now we're going to do the flag salute. So if we all could go ahead and stand, and we'll just give the praise and attention to our flag that it deserves. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, and then we'll start off with a roll call. So for the roll call, we have Commissioner Durney.
Present.
Great. Commissioner Hatley, here, present. Commissioner Castlebaum. Present. And Commissioner Spoonmore.
Present.
And then do I name the commissioners also that aren't here?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Commissioner.
Phillips is here.
Okay, I'll wait for her to sit down.
You're next to Mr. Spoonmore, just a few more, sorry. Yeah, there. Oh, thanks. Perfect.
Okay. Commissioner Phillips here.
Present.
Okay. And Commissioner Corey, I believe he's not present due to his commitment on an airplane flight. And new Commissioner Graykowski. I believe she was going to be here but is not, but we want to, in her absence, give her a welcome as a new member of our commission here, Commissioner Graykowski. Okay. For our first item that we have on the agenda, we need to appoint a new chair for our commission here. I'm vice chair. I'm currently filling in for the former chair that is no longer present. Do I have any nomination for a new chair for our commission?
I would like to nominate Lori Hackley for chairperson.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. And all in favor?
Choo choo. Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will happily accept that. This is my first meeting as chair. I will happily accept that nomination and continue forward as chair. Thank you very much. And that leaves then the vice chair position vacant. So do I have anybody that would like to make a nomination for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Rachel.
Okay. I'll second. I have a second on that? Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Ms.
Rachel, are you okay with that?
I think she is. Just hopefully nothing will happen to me and you'll be okay. So, okay, so new chair and Ms. Castlebaum. All right, very good. Okay, and then kind of along that same line, we need to nominate at least one of us to attend the August 23rd City Council meeting in case, I guess there's like a workshop or something that's going on at that time for the City Council on Wednesday the 23rd, and we need at least one community safety member in the audience in case the City Council has any questions. So if you want to check your schedule, first I'd just like to know if there's anybody, before we start making nominations, if anybody's interested in being our representative for that council meeting, just being in the audience in case the City Council has any questions. Anybody that's just...
I could be there if needed.
Okay.
My schedule's open, I can do it.
And I'm also kind of interested in doing that. I think we could have more than one. So was anybody else interested in going to that city council meeting and just be present for that workshop?
No, but put me down, put yourself
all right.
down.
And then do we need to go ahead and just have a vote on that? No, we'll just say that.
I think that no vote is necessary.
All right, okay, so it'll be Commissioner Durney, Commissioner Hatley will represent us at that city council meeting on the 23rd. Okay, very good. Now is the time for, thank you very much. We have the community here with us, and it's a time for oral communications. Do we have anyone that is present that will be speaking to us at this point?
Yes, we do. Mr. Gutierrez.
Wonderful. Hello, Mr. Gutierrez. Thank you so much for being here today.
Good afternoon. How are you doing? My name is Giuseppe Gutierrez. I'm a resident of Escondido. I live on 702 South Tulip Street. This is my second meeting in regards to our traffic concerns within our community. I've sent several emails to our city engineers. I started with Verpi when she was here years ago. and then it rolled into Ed, and then Ed went on some paternity leave, and then I briefly spoke with Craig a few months back regarding speed conditions on our street. Ed ended up sending out a speed survey trailer on our street. It had to show a certain percentile of speeders on the street. I think it was the 80th percentile, and I'm awaiting results. This was maybe 2 months ago, and I haven't heard back, so I thought I'd just come to the meeting, speak up, and just kind of share my thoughts and my concerns with the speed of this street. This is a main thoroughfare between shortcuts on West Valley, heading to West Valley Parkway and to Tulip Street, or no, I'm sorry, 9th Avenue. And this, everyone uses this as a shortcut. It's an uphill, downhill, and folks come flying up and down the hill. There's no less than 12 to 14 families that live on the street with multiple kids, and they're always out on the sidewalk playing, riding their bikes, going to the ice cream truck, what have you. And it's an extremely dangerous zone. There's no speed deterrence whatsoever. There's stop signs on controlled intersections, but there's no speed or warning or anything of that sort. And I have a 2-year-old son with one on the way, and I'm just very afraid for their safety as they grow up and they're out playing in the neighborhood. So I'd like to get something in place in order, because I understand this takes a long time to take necessary precaution and safety measures, so that way we can ensure our children's safety going forward. But I've done a lot of research. I've sent everything to Craig and Ed, and just hope there's some sort of resolution going forward. I know that it's been a longstanding policy of Escondido not to allow speed bumps, but these speed humps are especially designed to make accommodations for emergency vehicles, and I think that it would go a long way to help slow down the traffic in the community. And if there's anything you need from me or the members of our community to help move this or help push in the right direction, I'm more than happy to do the legwork or whatever you guys need to make this happen in the foreseeable future. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. I have a question. So it's on South Tulip between 9th and I imagine going south from there. What would you say would be the other cross street where?
Parkway, Valley Parkway. So you, as
Okay,
you
no, so it's
north-
north of there. Okay, so it's on Tulip between 9th and Valley Parkway.
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
all right.
And then as you, there's in the middle of that street, we're right there in the middle, and that's the thoroughfare that people are using to shortcut to jam
Okay.
across so they don't have to hit the freeway.
Okay, and you're in the middle of that span.
In
Okay.
the middle of the hill, so folks come up the hill, and it's kind of like a blind intersection, and they just fly up and over.
Okay.
Both ways.
And do you know, it's probably 25 miles per hour residential zone. Are there a couple of signs posted
Cars,
25?
Maybe 4 spaced throughout the whole duration of the street. Whether or not that folks follow that, whether they're in a hurry, they're late for school, whatever the case may be, it isn't abided by.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. I'm going to check with Mr. Williams. Do you have any background or any information on, you mentioned you as,
Ed Alberto.
Oh, hey, Ed. I actually, congratulations on the kiddo.
okay,
Congratulations for one on the way.
Thanks.
Time flies, 5 months.
okay.
Hi, Ed Alberto, City Traffic Engineer. I have spoken with Giuseppe. So what happened, we did request PD to put out the police department's radar speed trailer, which they did. I also had our public works staff place the armadillo. Unfortunately, the timing of that, the armadillo was up at the same time as the speed trailer, so that would tend to skew the results.
I'm sorry, I have to ask, I haven't heard that term before.
I'm sorry, the armadillo is our, it's a data gathering device. It's mounted to typically an existing street light. It's got a radar in it, and it can count vehicle speeds as well as volumes.
Okay, and collects data.
Yes. So to make sure that we're not using skewed data because the radar trailer was out at the same time of the data collection, I've ordered new speed and volume counts. I do believe the contractor is going to place those counting devices within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. And that was a follow-up on that.
Cool, thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gutierrez.
Okay, so, I mean, from there, so you take the data, you measure to see if it hits that 80 percentile, and then where do we go from there? Like, what's our next step?
So we'll take a look at the full data, look at time of day, what the volume looks like, what the 85th percentile speed. We'll go look through our traffic management toolbox. We'll consult with the police department to see if there's additional enforcement measures, and then kind of go from there.
Okay.
Just let the data kind of
Speak for itself.
speak for itself.
Okay, great. All right, well,
right, thank
appreciate
you.
everyone's time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your concern and interest in your neighborhood. So our next item is approval of our last meeting's minutes. So if I could just go ahead and have someone go ahead and
I move to approve the meeting minutes from our April 13th meeting.
Very good. And I have a second.
Second.
Okay, very good. And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Press the button. Thank you very much. Aye. And it looks like we have the minutes passed from our last meeting. Okay, now we're up for our items for today. We have a few items. The first one is approval of minor street stop control on Gretna Greenway and Canyon Road. And I imagine staff has a presentation for us on that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ed Alberto, City Traffic Engineer. And I will present to you guys a minor street stop control request for Gretna Greenway at Canyon Road. So if you recall at our last meeting, the Commission had approved the FY 23-24 traffic management project list, which included improvements to the Classical Academy at Canyon Road and Gretna Greenway. During the design of this project, staff recognized that Gretna Greenway does not have a stop control at the intersection of Canyon Road. And in our evaluation, we found that stop control on that minor street approach would be appropriate. Here you can see Gretna Greenway is the little sun dot here, just east of Bear Valley Parkway, north of Kit Carson Park. In that area, next to it is an aerial of the intersection, Gretna Green being the sort of east-west street and Canyon Road being the northwest street. So for stop warrants, we look at the California Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which provides guidance when applying stop controls. And it says for minor street approaches, it should be considered when engineering judgment indicates that a stop is always required because of one or more of the following conditions. One being volume with the main street exceeding 6,000 vehicles per day, restricted view that exists that requires roadway users to stop in order to adequately observe conflicting traffic, and crash records. When staff looked at these conditions, it met the restricted view that exists for roadway users. When looking at the stopping site distance for a 25-mile-an-hour roadway, it needs 150 feet of stopping site distance. This is a view from Gretna Greenway looking at northbound Canyon Road traffic. There is on-street parking on Canyon Road, and the little box would indicate if another vehicle was parked behind this Nissan. As you can see, the view would be restricted in that case. And from Gretna Greenway, looking at southbound traffic from Canyon Road, you can see even though the landscaping is relatively low, it still obstructs a portion of Canyon Road approach to Gretna Greenway. So with that, staff is proposing a minor street stop on Gretna Greenway. And if you recall from the TMPL project list that was approved, across Canyon Road, at this location, there will also be a high visibility crosswalk for students crossing at that school. And so staff's recommendation is to install a stop sign on Gretna Greenway for the minor street stop control, and to forward a recommendation to City Council to amend the traffic schedule of stop signs per Municipal Code, Section 28-5. Any questions?
Any questions from any of the commissioners?
I just didn't quite catch that. Will the crosswalk we were putting in, will that still go in?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Here's a photo of where the crosswalk will go in. The stop control would only be on Gretna Green.
I remember from either the last meeting or maybe meeting before when we talked about this, where we put in the high visibility crosswalk was a little bit against the kind of the natural flow where people just kind of wanted to cross the street naturally. I think maybe that was at the bottom of a staircase or something like that. Was that addressed at all?
We're still looking at that in the design. At this time, we could still place the curb ramp and the crosswalk on either side of the intersection, but we're still looking at what would be the most appropriate location for that.
Okay, all right, very good. We have to ask for approval of this, or is it just information? Okay, all right. Okay, if there's no more questions, go ahead and, is there a motion to go ahead and approve this item?
I move to approve this item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Durney. In a second.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And, okay, very good. Sounds like it went ahead and passed. Excellent. Okay, then we have item number 5, approval of the engineering and traffic surveys, ENTS, for posted speeds on various street segments citywide, and to forward recommendations to City Council to retain speed limits on 3 segments. So imagine, again, Staff has a report on that for us.
Ed Alberto, City Traffic Engineer, presenting the certification of new speed surveys. As always, when we do this, we'd like to present this slide to correlate speed and safety. We've updated this graphic as it illustrates as speed increases, the risk of death for pedestrians also increases. So you see at 23 miles per hour, the risk of death for pedestrians is about 10%, whereas upwards of 60 miles an hour, survivability greatly decreases. Speed limits are set based on the 85th percentile speed by state law. Speeding is the leading cause of fatal car collisions in the United States, and aggressive driving causes over 50% of collisions in the United States. The city has over 200 speed segments. They're updated periodically, 5, 7, or 14 years per the California Vehicle Code. The update ensures that speed limits reflect current conditions. Per the Vehicle Code, we're required to set speed limits to be based on 5 miles an hour increments to the 85th percentile speed. And the 85th percentile speed is calculated based on the prevailing speeds of at least 100 vehicles. So in determining the speed limit, we collect vehicle speed data. We determine that 85th percentile speed and round that to the appropriate number. And so the 85th percentile speed is the speed at which or below drivers typically drive at safe speeds for those conditions. So typically, if an 85th percentile speed came in at 37 miles an hour, you would round down to 35 miles per hour. If it was 38 miles an hour, you would round up to 40 miles an hour. There is a caveat in the Vehicle Code which allows these speeds to be rounded down. So if it was 38, it could be rounded down to 35 instead of 40 miles per hour in that case. Assembly Bill 43 took effect in January 2022, made some changes to the Vehicle Code. It authorized local authorities to, by ordinance, retain current speed limits or restore the prior speed limits if the speeds that were determined are still more than reasonable or safe after completing an engineering and traffic survey. We also look at accident data. We have our Crossroads database. This is maintained by our police department. We look at 3 years of collisions and compare those to statewide accident rates for similar roadway classifications. So for this meeting, we're looking at 6 street segments. Segment number 1, North Broadway between North Avenue and Jesmond Dean. We're utilizing the ability to round down instead of round up. That way the existing 45 mile an hour speed limit will be retained. Segments 2 and 3, it's just normal rounding. They would round down to their existing posted speed limit, so no changes on those segments. For segments 4, 5, and 6, through rounding, even with rounding down, the speed limit would increase by 5 miles an hour. So staff is recommending to retain the existing speed limits by ordinance according to the California Vehicle Code. So staff's recommendations are to certify the proposed speed limits and recommend to City Council to pass an ordinance retaining speed limits on 3 roadway segments.
Any questions? Any commissioners?
Yeah, I have some concerns about speed segment 4, the Citricado Parkway Valley to Scenic Trail. I'm curious if you have for the speed survey, what the 50th percentile speed is. And also, am I correct that that's the main access for Del Lago Academy, the school, right? I mean, looking at the 85th percentile, that's 45 miles an hour, and then you want to round down to 35. It just seems like it's setting up a easy, not to use speed, or not speed trap, but it's setting up, you've got teens and parents that are driving, and they're driving 45 miles an hour, and then you're asking them to slow to 35, or in some cases, all the way down to 25 miles an hour. It seems like a stretch that if we want to keep the 35 mile an hour posted speed limit, that we need some kind of traffic calming or.
And I can actually give a little history on that because I've lived at the end of that road for 20 years now. And I'm pretty sure it was 35 from the beginning when it was just a 2-lane road, but now they've been expanding it, and as more development has gone in, as school has gone in, it's now 2 lanes in both directions. It's 35 all the way from Valley Parkway, so it's not a slow down to 35, it's actually a starting up from 0 to 35. I hit that road a lot, yeah. People are driving at quite often over 35. I will not admit to doing that myself, of course, but I've seen people do it. And someone who isn't me has done it, I'm sure. I've seen them do it. Yeah, it's, I don't, I'm almost like, hey, if I vote against this, I can go faster, but I really do think that the slower speed is better because I see a lot of students on the sidewalk. I mean, not tons, but, dozens during the day, and the 35 is probably fine at this point, would be my thought. Even though everyone goes
Note that
fast.
it wouldn't be a speed trap since we are still following the vehicle code.
Yeah, do you have the, for the 85th, do you have I'm just curious what the 50th percentile.
Yeah, I don't have the data in
you don't
front of
have
me
it.
right now. But
We're just, at that point, you're getting to, if 85% of the vehicles are, going under 45, but you're dropping it 10 extra miles, what percentage are now going over 35 miles an hour?
and we could definitely look at potential traffic calming for the future on that roadway segment.
Yeah, and I'd be wondering did you have the equipment that picked up the 45 miles an hour? How far on the road was that? Because it's about a quarter-mile stretch, so there could be a different thing there. And as far as traffic calming, my first thought would be one of those flashing, you're going too fast things, but we're not there yet, I don't think.
And then as far as the asterisks over on the side, I'm sorry, seeing the next page, or, okay, look at, does that have to do with the retain existing speed limit per? Okay, all right. Okay, any further questions? No, okay, is there a motion to approve the new speed limits or retaining the existing ones?
I'll move to approve the speeds.
Okay, and a second? Thank you. Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and looks like another approved. Okay, item number 6, comprehensive active transportation strategy, community mobility options, mobility element project update. Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Craig Williams, a traffic engineer with the city. Happy to present this item. We have been working on getting the Comprehensive Active Transportation Strategy, CATS, on the street for some time, and we've talked with you a number of times about it. So we're pleased that we're at this stage, and we're happy to think about getting started on it pretty soon. We wanted to talk a little bit today about some changes to the scope of work as a result of an opportunity that the city had. But before I dive too deep into that, let me just explain. It's really an opportunity. It's a unique opportunity to take this deep dive into how people travel throughout the city, where they want to go, and then establish a project list to achieve a 8 to 80 city. If you're not familiar with that term, it basically is saying that it's a goal to provide a city infrastructure such that people from the age of 8 to the age of 80 have an ability to get around, that we are not saddled with a transportation system that only allows people that drive the opportunity to get around. So it's a strategy that a number of cities have endorsed, and we're hoping to bring at least some of that to the city of Escondido. We're doing that, as we've talked a couple different times, through this comprehensive active transportation strategy, and I think we've talked about that in the past. One of the things that we expanded the opportunities here to include updating our mobility element. I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute, but it's an older document. It's getting to be 11 years old right now. And then finally, we had an opportunity that came up during the time that we were advertising the CATS project. We had a great opportunity to look into this community mobility options grant program, a voucher program, and had some success in that. And then we had to step back and integrate that effort into the overall CATS project. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit more. So the CATS, as we've talked before, the last time we did a master plan was 2012. Again, that's about 11 years ago. It only really looked at bicycling. We wanted to take an opportunity to look at pedestrians and transit and again, this opportunity of getting people around the city of all ages and ability. The plan was to evaluate existing infrastructure and who's actually using it, looking at sidewalks and bike facilities and trails, identifying gaps and barriers. A barrier might be, a great example of a barrier, two barriers would be I-15 for east-west movements, and then State Route 78 for north-south movements. It does block movements. We're actually fortunate that we have a lot of underpasses and along both those facilities, but it's still, it's easy enough to move around an underpass if you're in a car, but if you're going to be walking or riding a bike or taking transit, then it gets a little more complicated. The other thing that I think is interesting, we evaluating opportunities to create mobility hubs. You know, we have a mobility hub at the transit center, but we also have opportunities to see that expand through a separate project that the city is working on. But there are opportunities to do some satellite hubs, which could include transit access as well as, say, rental bikes or scooters or Uber drop-off and pick up, some sort of a mobility hub, perhaps some other additional transit access. So Sandag has been furthering the idea of developing mobility hubs around the region, and we're I think in a good position to capture some additional money to do that. This effort also puts us in a good place to put together a prioritized list of projects, and then it documents the process and the projects for future grant funding opportunities. You really have to have a plan in order to apply for a certain number of grant programs, and this puts us in a better position than we would be if we said, we haven't done a bike plan or a ped plan in the last 10 years, so this is a good opportunity. One of the things we wanted to do as far with this CATS effort is to actually look at how our roadways are being used. Do we have roads out there that have an excess number of lanes that might be purposed for something else? A good example of that is Valley Parkway right in front of us here. We had 4 lanes of Valley Parkway. We took one of those lanes and put a Class 4 bikeway on there. It's actually used quite frequently, and it provided an incredibly great connection for the Escondido Creek Trail. So we might be looking at, are there opportunities like that around the city? Some roadways may not have enough space, so are we going to identify some roads that are vehicular priority, some other roads that might be a bicycle priority, greenway priority? It's an excellent opportunity to look at the needs that people have identified of their barriers for getting around the city, and whether or not we can repurpose or rebalance our transportation system to provide for some of those future opportunities. And I did want to add here that the funding for both of these efforts were actually in the CIP budget. We aren't doing this with a grant. So we have the funds available for us and can do what we need to do with it. So backing up to where we were on actually the opportunity to advertise for the CATS effort. We solicited proposals back in February. We received proposals for really 4 very good proposals from 4 very good firms. Fair and Peers with a number of local partners, Kittleson Associates, Chen Ryan Associates, and Michael Baker. Michael Baker, you may remember, did our local roadway safety plan. Fair and Peers did our VMT program, and then later our mitigation program. Kittleson has done a number of development projects. Kimley Horn has done, they have done the design work on the Grand Avenue Vision project. Chen Ryan has done a number of projects for developers around the city. Based on the criteria that we had identified, we were very comfortable. Actually, it was a unanimous decision to select Fair and Peers for this effort, and we have been working with them for the last, well, actually, probably a month and a half, 2 months to negotiate the scope. And that brings us to our next slide. This Clean Mobility Options program opportunity came up earlier in the year, and we were told that the city had a good chance of getting the possible $100,000 to complete this community transportation needs assessment. If we were to be successful in that grant request, and we did a needs assessment according to the rules, it puts us in an extremely good position to capture another $1.5 million going forward to actually implement something that's identified in this needs assessment. National City, Chula Vista, Imperial County have both been past recipients of the grant process, and they have followed through and captured funds to actually implement it. So understand that we were just successful in getting a $100,000 grant, and a lot of that is involved doing some pretty extensive public outreach. Now, the CATS project that was going to be getting started around the same time was also doing a fair amount of public outreach, but not quite as deep a dive as the Clean Mobility Options program wanted us to do. The other side of the Clean Mobility Options was that they had a very tight time frame, 12 months from the date of award to the date they needed to get the transportation needs assessment complete. That's very difficult if you have to put an RFP out on the street, select a consultant, get them going, get them to do public outreach, and actually present a report. Very difficult. We asked the administrators of that program, we described what we were doing with CATS and the mobility element and whether or not we could potentially use that same consultant. We were fortunate that where we were in the negotiation process with Fair and Peers, and the administrators of the program said yes, as long as you keep the accounting pretty clean. So it's taken us a little bit longer to get through the contract negotiation process, but I have to say that we're very pleased with the way it worked out. A large part of the public outreach that we're doing with CATS is going to be paid for largely by the CMO program. And then we'll be doing some supplemental outreach that's unique to the CATS opportunity just for bike ped. But we're happy that it came out pretty clean, and it's going to allow us to keep the accounting clean as well. So that was kind of a long explanation. I'm sorry about that, but it It was somewhat of a complex negotiation, but I think we're pleased with the way that it worked out. I offered this particular slide here. It's just literally a cut and paste out of the top of the schedule, but you'll notice that this phase 1 is largely the CMO effort. So that first 6 months there, we'll be doing a lot of public outreach, and I'll talk about that scope in a minute. And then largely in phase 2 and phase 3, we're done with the CMO effort, and we're moving more deliberately into the project identification and the mobility element update part of it. A little bit about scope, and these first 5 scope items, as I mentioned, and again, it's in this the green bar here. We're looking at data analysis, key characteristics. Again, it's a pretty deep dive. We'll be developing a stakeholder group, several meetings, outreach framework. They'll be doing some branding associated with the CMO as well as the CATS. Sorry about all the acronyms. Quite a few public workshops, 3 different events, 2 in-person workshops, another virtual workshop, ongoing community events like Grape Day Park or Cruising Grand or any number of events that the city has going on. Task 3 puts together this needs assessment, basically says, where do you need to go? You and particularly, it's focused on disadvantaged neighborhoods within the city. Where do you need to go to get to your jobs, to get to your community activities? Can you get there within the system that's provided in the city now? How do you need it supplemented? We'll take all of that information, then put together kind of a project list in this needs assessment, and then see where it takes us. Again, we do have a good opportunity for some cash to help us implement that, but we don't exactly know what that is going to be. Maybe it's a shuttle service, maybe it's an on-demand system. We don't really know that yet because we can't kind of presuppose what the outreach is, what his results are. So then moving out of the transportation needs assessment into CATS, a lot of these things we've already talked about. We're doing some additional outreach, stakeholder working groups that'll be focusing more on the active transportation piece of it, working with the schools on certain outreach, some safe routes to school analysis. One of the things we want the consultant to do is to take a hard look at our existing policies and our existing procedures. Many of you may know that some of our pedestrian policies date back to 1974, and they have not been updated since that time. And I will tell you that the design world has changed a lot since 1974, and we're hoping to look at the way that we're doing things. A good example might be pedestrian crossings, mid-block crossings, things like that. There's technology available that didn't exist in 1974, so we'll be taking a hard look at that. They'll actually be looking at we'll develop a system. You know how we do a level of service for cars around the system. We'll be doing a similar system for bicyclists and pedestrians, looking at what the level of service is on Valley Parkway versus what it is on Tulip versus what it is on El Norte, those kinds of roads, and identifying which roads are really fairly friendly for bicycling or pedestrians, walking, and which ones aren't. And that'll help us do our project list to see what we want to get improved. And the final, we'll start putting together the strategy. We'll be looking at these different modal elements. We're not going to do a really deep dive into an in-depth transit study, but we'll be looking at identify what we can do in the future for a lot of these things. And then putting together the action plan and then the overall strategy. And finally, the last segment of that is, as I mentioned earlier, updating the mobility element, taking a look at which roads have overcapacity or undercapacity, which ones might be more conducive to handling connections for bicyclists and pedestrians, and which ones we really want to keep segregated for more vehicular traffic. Last slide here is something I don't expect you to look at it closely, but you will recognize that we've already talked about pieces of this. There's a schedule up top. We expect it will be done right around the beginning of 2025. We've scheduled in about 18 months. The contract for Fair and Piers, as well as the clean mobility option agreement, the voucher agreement, are both included in items for council to consider next Wednesday. There's a separate resolution that was required for the CMO program, and then a resolution for the Fair and Piers agreement. We're hopeful that council will approve that next week, and then we can get a notice to proceed in the next coming weeks after that. So that was a lot to deliver, and I'm sorry it took me a little longer than I hoped, but Craig's he's still there, so good. Any questions anybody has?
Questions?
I had just a curiosity. You said something about keeping the accounting clean. So is it for the $100,000 grant, we're getting basically a $100,000 extra insight, or is some of that helping fund what we had from CIP, and therefore there's a little bit left from what we originally planned from CIP? Does that make sense? Are we getting CIP plus $100,000, or is a little bit of this $100,000 replacing a little bit of what was CIP?
I wouldn't say it's replacing CIP. It's just that the two efforts sort of coincide with each other. So it makes sense to have Fair and Piers do
both.
the entire thing. So we were awarded $100,000 through clean mobility options.
Gotcha.
And through that, we're expected to spend that on meaningful public outreach and produce this community transportation needs assessment. And that information we're getting through clean mobility options is still useful as part of the CATS mobility element effort. Yeah.
I will say that it'll be extremely helpful. A lot of information, actually, I think that we'll get that we may not have gotten before. And it's looking like it will allow us to do some optional items that we wanted to be able to do, like an interim design guide, which will serve the city for many years to come, both on development projects and city projects. So I think it'll be a win-win for everybody.
Any more questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Williams. I
Thank
can
you.
see how much work you put in this, and you're going to continue to be putting more work into this project. Thank you very much.
Well, we'll continue to update you and get you involved if you want in the stakeholder group. Will yet to be determined once we get started on that. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Our next item is number 7. It's a traffic signal priority list.
Ed Alberto, City Traffic Engineer. At the last commission meeting, we were asked to come back and provide an update on the traffic signal priority list. And so this is our informational presentation to you guys on that. So an overview, traffic engineering staff compiles an updated priority list for potential signal projects for both new traffic signals and upgrading existing traffic signals to add left turn phasing. The traffic signal priority list is assessed on a 5-year cycle. The last TSPL was adopted in 2021, and the next one we expect to start in 2026. The purpose is to determine if intersections are meeting the basic criteria to install a traffic signal and be able to prioritize how each location compares to each other. Then determine which projects can be funded from current and future capital projects or seeking future grant funding opportunities. Study intersections are determined through referencing the previous TSPLs, the locations that did not meet warrants. At that time, we take another look at them to see if there's been changes in traffic patterns and land uses that would make them warranted in the future. We compile lists from citizens, council members, and other departments. Staff is also developing an inventory of existing signals and which approaches have existing left turn phases. That was an attachment that we'd handed out. So we asked you guys if you want to take a look at any of those, or if you have any recommendations for locations where you believe we need left turn phasing, feel free to reach out to staff and we can add those to the list. Our prioritization criteria coincides with the California Manual for Traffic Control Devices, looking at total vehicular volume, interruption of continuous traffic, ped volumes, school areas, progressive movement through signal systems, accident histories, and the peak hour volumes. The current traffic signal priority list is proposing 3 new traffic signals. Rock Springs and Lincoln would be developer funded. It's currently, I believe, in 30% plans. Harding Lincoln, Lomas Serenas Drive, and Villa Rancho Parkway, those would be future CIP projects, or if we find funding through other sources for those. The current left turn phasing projects, there are 10 of them. Bear Valley Mary Lane is currently under construction, as is Juniper and Felicita. Rose Street and Washington Avenue has been budgeted. It's currently in design. The remaining list, we did apply for Cycle 11 Highway Safety Improvement Program funds and were not successful for left turn phasing. We did get a HSIP grant to install retroreflective backplates, ped countdown heads, and APS at several intersections. But unfortunately, our left turn phasing grant application was not approved. We submitted an application for Safe Streets for All funding, the federal grant program, on July 10, and we expect to hear results from that at the end of the year. Hopefully we're successful in that funding, in which case the remaining left turn phasing projects would all be funded. Excuse me. Currently, the next list that we'd be looking at in 2026, there are 6 locations that we look at, 3 from the previous list that were not warranted, and another 3 based on resident requests. And also for left turn phasing, there were 4 intersections that did not meet the warrants for left turn phasing previously that we will look at again, and we have a new resident request for Lincoln and Ash. And with that, are there any questions?
Well, I don't have a question, but I have a statement. I just want to say I'm really not that big of a fan of left turn phasing just kind of being a mandatory thing on signal lights. If there's no accidents in the intersection, basically, or it's low traffic volume, it's a big time issue always when you approach a left turn, and it's a red and there's no traffic coming the other way, and you have to wait. Sometimes it doesn't trip, or you have to wait until the other way on the intersection trips, and then they finally let you go when it's your turn to go along with the straight through traffic next to you. I mean, every signal seems to have its own personality. So I just want to make a statement that just because a signal doesn't have left turn phasing, I don't necessarily believe that it's always necessary that we have to implement it. Like, for instance, on your 10 list here, I'm a big fan of getting left turn phasing at Fig and Mission. I've talked about that intersection before, that people just don't get that intersection, and there seems to be a lot of accidents there and near accidents. And I think left turn phasing would help there. But like at Metcalf and Mission and Quince and Washington, there's really not that much of a traffic flow through there, and I don't think there's a big accident issue at Metcalf and Mission. I think that's a very low traffic volume intersection. And also, even though Quince and Washington is a larger intersection, I go through all these intersections fairly frequently. I don't feel there's that big of a traffic volume there, and if traffic doesn't have to wait and sit at a red arrow when there's no traffic coming the other way, it's great when you can just make that turn. I guess the only argument to have more, left turn phasing would be just drivers need to be educated that just because they say a green light doesn't mean that they can make their left, that they have to realize they have to yield to oncoming traffic. So I don't know, in some cases, if just a sign above, says, you have to yield, green light yields to oncoming traffic before you make your left turn, basically those warning signs. I don't know if that would be helpful in those situations, or if just the public needs to be educated more on that. Just because your light's green doesn't necessarily mean you can make a left. You have to check. And then I had a question about like the Escondido and Grand. I think that's on flashing now, right? It's been on flashing for a long time. Isn't that like way in the future, thinking about putting like a traffic circle there or something? And so, but I think that was on the list of a possible signal light or left turn. Well, it's a signal light they're flashing now, but I mean
There's an existing signal at Escondido.
right.
It's
On flash.
it's fully functional.
Oh, it is. Okay, I thought that was.
Broadway and Grant and.
Oh, okay, never mind. I'm thinking about Broadway. Okay, that's right. Okay, all right, never mind. I was getting my intersections mixed up. Okay, all right, yeah, that one, sometimes there is a lot of traffic coming the other way. That might be helpful to have a green or a left turn phase light on that. Okay, anyways, that's it. I just wanted to say, just because a signal light doesn't have that left turn phase on it, I wouldn't say always that it absolutely has to have it. So that's all.
And agreed, we're not looking to add left turn phases at every signalized intersection for the sake of it. We do go through a warrant system and analysis to determine if it's appropriate for that, or if it, how it affects the level of service and delay at those intersections.
Okay, all right, very good.
And I think you said it best, each street has a personality, and they all are different.
Yeah, right. Okay, then on to item number 8, citywide traffic project status report.
Okay. So again, the staff report has updates on our current projects in the city. I'm not going to go through every single project. We just want to highlight a couple of them here this afternoon. If you recall at the last meeting, Troop 2080 came out and advocated for a high visibility crosswalk at North Avenue and North Broadway. I did send out to the commissioners the thank you we got from the troop. And again, their quote to us was, "We did this," and they're really proud of it. We're really happy that they came out and created a core memory for themselves, and hopefully they are civically engaged more in the future. The other TMPL projects are in design, looking to try to get the bid packages out within the next month or two. The 7 Creek crossings was installing upgraded crossings at Juniper, Hickory, Fig, Harding, Rose, Midway, and Citrus. 6 of those crossings are new rectangular rapid flashing beacons with a new full pedestrian signal at Midway Drive. A couple aerial shots of the new improvements that have gone in. This would be a rapid rectangular flashing beacon crossing. You can tell with the approaching yield markings on the roadway. Another one. This is the signal at Midway. It's controlling the 2 driveways on both sides of the street for their access onto Midway. And as far as I've heard so far, the property owners have had no issues with the signal currently in operation today. There were some issues earlier on with people not recognizing the RRFBs and not yielding to pedestrians, and the police department did do a pedestrian sting at those locations with our chief of police being our decoy crossing the street in those locations. Citricado Parkway extension, here's an aerial shot of the bridge deck location in October of 2022. And this is as of the end of June. They are making progress on this location, and it looks like the bridge is coming together. Grand Avenue Vision project is phase 2 is in design. Here's a couple of concept drawings of proposed roundabouts at Maple and at Broadway. So we're moving along with that process as well. With that, is there questions on any other projects?
No questions, but you sure have a nice list of projects going.
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. Then that probably concludes our meeting for today. Thank you very much, staff, for all your work. And do I have a motion for adjournment?
No motion.
Okay, that's fine. 2 motions to adjourn, and how about a second?
Second.
Second, great. And that concludes our meeting for today of the Traffic Safety Commission. Thank you very much.